I'm going, whoa, this is now real. This is happening. I want to be part of that.
Welcome, everyone, to We're Not Alone, streaming on Queen City News Plus. I'm your host, May K. Veeler. I'm also the chief transportation correspondent here at Queen City News, a pilot of over 40 years and counting. So, of course, I'm infatuated with all things flying, and that includes things beyond the wild blue yonder. And our special guest today actually is known as Washington, D.C.'s UFO lobbyist for alien aircraft, Stephen Bassett. He has spoken to audiences in 20 countries about the political implications of UAPs and ET experiences and disclosure. He's got quite a resume. Executive director of Paradigm Research Group. It's a nonprofit providing education, analysis, and political activism for a post-disclosure world. He's also working to bring more congressional hearings to Capitol Hill. He's the co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in L.A. Oh, lots to talk about. So let's welcome in Stephen Bassett from our nation's capital. Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, my pleasure.
So I know you're a very busy man. You're very much in demand. You've spoken all over the world. What is the main message you would like to share with us today?
Oddly enough, 30 years in now, as an activist, I happen to be registered lobbyist. There's now 6 or 7 others that have registered, but I was the first, so I got a little attention for that. But I'm basically a political activist trying to achieve a fundamental outcome. And that outcome is for the President of the United States to confirm what? We are not alone. That is what this is all about. That is what I call disclosure. Now, it can come in many ways. For instance, the president could state, I'm confirming that we have advanced non-human technology and even the bodies of technologically advanced non-humans, as David Grush has stated and others have stated. So clearly, we are not alone. Or he could say there's an extraterrestrial presence. Whatever the president says, or the first head of state says along those lines, is disclosure. And the ultimate outcome is that we are not alone. And in a sense, that is the most important part of it, because tech is tech. It can help you, it can hurt you. Who knows? We get new tech and then blow people up with it. And the government secrecy and the abuse of power that has accompanied this is a problem, but then that's been going on forever. But the fact that the human race in short order will, pretty much everyone, I mean, maybe there'll be a few holdouts, but let's just say most of 8.3 billion people in short order, 6 months, a year, whatever, are going to factor into their worldview. They're not the only intelligent species in the galaxy, assuming they're extraterrestrial, which I'm almost certain that they are. And that opens up a million questions, possibilities. It opens up 1,000 doors that we couldn't go through before. It changes the world in a way probably nothing compares to it. Particularly given the modern world, how advanced we are, how many people we have. I'm sure that if they turned up in ancient Egypt 3,000 years ago, that was kind of profound, but not like now. And so that is ultimately what we have to have, a new worldview which factors in we are not alone, and how are we going to conduct our affairs globally, personal affairs, nation-to-nation affairs in this new situation. That's what this is fundamentally about.
So you said something that you are certain that they are extraterrestrials. Are you really certain, and how do you know?
I'm certain that we have this technologically advanced non-human presence and the craft and so forth. The degree of certainty on extraterrestrial is high. But having said that, now by that, I'm talking 98%, maybe 99%, and I can give you the reasons for that. But that doesn't rule out that they could be also interdimensional. They could be time travelers. They could be all three. But if you're a betting person and you're going to bet everything that you have on one of those three, you're going to win your money on extraterrestrial. and the odds, you're going to lose your money. You might win on the others, but you maybe get great odds. But it's like everything else. You can win the lottery on a single ticket. So the evidence, I say, overwhelming that they're extraterrestrial, and I'm happy to elaborate if you need me to.
Oh, I have so many questions. Let's just go back in time for a minute. When you first became interested in flying saucers, UFOs, now UAPs, were you a child? Did you watch a TV show? What triggered this interest? It's become your lifelong journey now.
As a young man, as a kid, it was sci-fi was my thing, and a lot of young boys back then at that time in the golden age, they say, of written sci-fi, Heinlein and Asimov and all these people. I read those and I loved it. Okay. Well, I don't know why, I just did. Some kids would hate it. I wasn't reading Shakespeare and I wasn't reading Toynbee or any of the great books. I've just reading sci-fi. And then the articles started turning up here and there about this phenomena. And so when I read those articles, I had no bias whatsoever. And I'm just reading them and logically assessing them. And it seemed quite obvious to me that that's exactly what they were referring to. One of the most famous articles from that time, which came out in, I think, 66. So was it 66? Might have been 66. Yeah. So I was maybe 20, but I think I knew about it sooner because of the work of some of the research like Hopkins. Fowler was the Benny and Barney Hill case. So when I read that, it was clear to me that that was an extraterrestrial encounter. Again, I had no reason to think otherwise. Um, but there were other articles. So I was paying attention to it, and it was fascinating. And then the sci-fi movies came, right, in the 50s and the 60s, and I went to those. There weren't too many docs. I don't recall seeing any docs about it. There was never a what we'll call a big screen doc until I think 86, and it was about ancient times. It was like the Chariots of the Gods, Von Däniken stuff. I didn't see that. But the sci-fi movies, coupled with the odd article and my interest in mostly science, it was pretty obvious to me. But that's no big deal. It's obvious, but I didn't do anything. I didn't jump in. But then as the years go by, I keep noting, and nothing is coming from it. Because obviously, as we move further into the 80s, 90s, certainly 78, 90s, things keep popping up. There's the story here, story there. No, nothing is coming from this in terms of government. And that intrigued me. But again, I had other problems to deal with. But in 1995, when I was forced with a very serious decision to make, uh, you're not going to live forever. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? Which is a decision that a lot of people face around that time in their life. And it's not a fun time because if you don't have an answer to that question, you're in deep trouble. I searched for an answer and this issue was there. And I read some more books. I went to a conference, my first one ever. And I, I decided that this is not only real, which I knew, but it's going to become a thing. It's going to come into the public domain in a formal way. And that would be the biggest event in human history. Was that enough? Not quite. What triggered it was ultimately made the decision for me was reading the book Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens by John Mack, the late Dr. John Mack. He was a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's an extraordinary human being. He had a Harvard education. He was head of psychology, I think psychology or psychiatry at the hospital there next to Harvard. I'm going, whoa, this is now real. This is happening. I want to be part of that. I want to be part of this issue now for, I think, pretty straightforward reasons. Not to have fun, not to join a cult, but because it was real and the implications were extraordinary. And I was at core a political activist. I'd marched in this group and that group and this issue and whatever the hell. This was a chance for me to bring my inner political activist out. And I got very lucky. They let me come to Cambridge, work as a volunteer, got to meet John Mack, got to meet my first contactees. And then the question is, what next? And what next was, I knew Washington. I could live in Washington. I grew up there. Well, I came of age in Washington, D.C. And so I said, I'm going to go to Washington and engage the politics of this because that's the problem, not the science. It's been proven 10 times over. It's not about science. It's about politics. I came to D.C., registered as a lobbyist. That was my plan, knowing that that was going to be the first registration and is going to get attention. And that's it. And it goes from there. And I've never had a moment's doubt about that decision. Never. And I've been through a lot in 30 years. And boy, I'll tell you, that is a gift. Anybody that can get to a place in life where they make a decision about what they're going to do,
Yeah.
and years go by and they never doubt it, they are blessed.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I'm very fortunate.
It is your destiny. We're going to take a quick break. There's so much to talk about. Stay with us. We'll be right back when We Are Not Alone continues. Steve, have you faced any danger with what your mission is? Has anyone tried to stop you? I mean, I know you're not a whistleblower. You're a light worker. You're trying to bring this information to light. Has anyone tried to stop you?
No, I've never, my phone was tapped a few times, which didn't bother me. I've never been threatened. I've never had a problem, and I've never been in danger. Now, from the very beginning, my intention was not to have that problem. And
Wow.
I set some rules for myself that have paid off quite well. One rule: no secrecy, no shenanigans, no encryption, right? Eventually, I ended up getting Signal only because people wanted to call me on Signal. I'm going, okay. But overall, I mean, for years and years, no, none of that. Everything was wide open. I made it very clear what I was doing, what was going on, and I wasn't going to play hide and seek with the government, because if you're open, if you're completely open, and they get that, their paranoia goes way down. It's when they don't know what the hell you're doing that they can get a little upset. Two, I didn't demonize the government. I wasn't going to go on a jihad against the government because of they hid this and did that. I made it clear there was a national security policy, and that the people that were pursuing that policy were basically good people that were defending the country. And if they did some what you call clandestine stuff, maybe a little secrecy, maybe a little this was not unusual in service of national security. So demonizing the government was not going to help. Demonizing the people in government that were servicing this issue was not going to help, which is why I made a great effort to change the term UFO cover-up to truth embargo. By and large, I think I succeeded, because I was pretty much the only, I came up with the term truth embargo. I was the only one really trying to make that maneuver. And you don't hear UFO cover-up so much, because UFO cover-up says it's an illegal act. Everyone involved is a criminal. And that's not how you make friends and influence people. So I did that. It was another decision I made. The other was, I'm not going to argue with people on the internet. I'm not going to get into fights back and forth. I'm not going to respond to attacks. The internet is not the place for that. It is hopeless. It is a waste of time. And so I'm going to present a positive presence there, and not go after anybody. And as a result, it just keeps that kind of stuff away. If you want to go there, you can, but you are inviting trouble. And if you don't want trouble, if you don't want to have that interfere with the fundamental work that you're doing, you don't do that. Now, I'm not saying that in activism that doesn't happen. I mean, there are some major activist movements that had to invite trouble in order to get the awareness that they needed, in order to incite people to kind of get involved. But they were a different kind of activism. This is not like any activist movement in history. And it's worked.
So, Steve, let me ask you, do you think you're being protected or led or guided by a higher power? And by higher power, we don't just mean God or angels, but maybe extraterrestrial intelligence or someone that's helping you, because you're really strong when you talk about this.
I don't. I'm a rationalist. And that's a safe term. All the other terms are, how would you say, awkward. I'm a rationalist. If it is a non-rational assumption, I'm not particularly crazy about it. And so, since I have no idea at all if the extraterrestrials even know I exist, and certainly in terms of higher powers and things like that, I have no sense of that at all. And so I am, in that sense, very much nuts and bolts. And
wow.
And this is interesting, because I've been involved in a subject for years and surrounded by people and friends and colleagues that can get some pretty exotic interpretations. Uh,
Sure,
and
sure.
I'm sometimes invited to join in, right? Some rabbit holes want to come down
Right.
with it,
Right.
and I don't go, but I also I don't condemn or chastise them for these views. The world is more than we know and very complex, but I don't go there. That has been a very good help to me because the moment you go to some of those places, you start shedding support very quickly. And if you're trying to engage the government to do something at an extremely high level, which is what disclosure will be, going to those places doesn't help. Not saying there's anything wrong with that.
Right,
Simply
right. But
saying
it
being
ruins your credibility. It has stigma attached to it.
in the minds of some, right?
Yeah.
But being a strong rationalist, pretty much grounded, but not nasty. In other words, I'm grounded. Maybe you're not, but that's okay, right? I have no problem with that. It's been very helpful in being able to stick with this for 30 years with a minimum amount of grief. I've had some, not from the government, from elsewhere, but I've had some, and I'm again, it's fortunate that it's worked out that way.
All right. So I want to talk about, do the presidents know, will lawmakers ever know when is disclosure coming? What will it look like? But I want to just clarify something. So from what you've just told me, am I correct in assuming you have never had an encounter?
That's right.
You've never seen a or UAP?
There was a couple of times when I was, at a conference and somebody said they saw something up in the sky, and I kind of looked at it and kind of sensed it seemed interesting. I've been on a couple of night thingies, right? But frankly, no. I mean, I know people that have had real sightings and that are absolutely unambiguous, and I believe them because they're pretty intelligent and honest. I've never had that at all, and I've certainly never had contact, and that's a blessing. Believe me, it's very complicating, and people have
Why
thought,
is it a blessing, Steve?
what now?
Why is it a blessing that you haven't had an encounter?
Because if you're trying to engage the government and the politicians and the mainstream media, who have been bamboozled by the truth embargo, compromised, even the people that didn't want to be. I mean, it's a mess. The truth embargo is an astounding thing. Uh, Having contact or a profound sighting is such an emotionally powerful thing that you are fundamentally biased at that point.
Yeah.
And the moment you confirm it, which is as a Sagittarian, if somebody asks me if you had a sighting, I'm going to say no if I haven't had a sighting. Sagittarians can't lie. They break out in hives. They get upset stomachs. And so if you had a sighting, then you say that right away, you've developed a bias, which is not helping to deal with the people out there that are standing in the way. And so, in a sense, it's a blessing. Now, after disclosure, and we get the job done, and we've gone into the post-disclosure world, if anything wants to show up big time, I'm down, right? Bring it on. But until then, it helps to just be coming from a purely rational, political, justified, and appropriate position.
Okay, so have past presidents known about possible ETs? Do you think President Trump knows? What can you tell us about that?
I'm pretty matter of fact about this. It's impossible to prove it,
Mm.
right? It's impossible to prove it for some very interesting reasons, but applying some pretty significant common sense and just understanding enough of the political history of the last 78 years, I am willing to put pretty much my life savings. I don't actually have a life savings, but if I had a life savings, I'd put it down on the fact that every single president is known from Truman on.
Okay.
And the reason for this is not complicated. Knowing that there's a presence is simply there's a presence. Okay, thank you. Right? You don't have to get given a tour of 100 underground bases or be introduced to a live alien or see the dead aliens in a container somewhere. You just have to be told by somebody that knows. Yeah, there's ETs here. We're not alone. That's it. Every president has known this. Every single one. It's impossible not to. Why? You're the most powerful leader in the world. You have unbelievable access to all kinds of things and a huge number of people that are dying to get your favor, to be in your circle. And so you don't have to get a readout report from some special access program of the Pentagon. You just need somebody pretty up there to sidle up to your cocktail party. Some undersecretary of something, some, 3-star general. It just kind of tells you off the record, Mr. President, that is true. They are here. I'm not suggesting you do anything about it, but you ought to know. They're lining up to do that. And that happens to be true for your billionaires, right? Pick them, Musk, Thielman, Bezos, any of them. How about the major people in Hollywood, like Robbins and Spielberg? There are people lining up to tell powerful people like this something important like that. Not formally, but just letting them know, right? You really are not, if you're not, I'm going to tell you something and you may already know, but hey, just to let you know, yeah, this thing is real. These craft are not human. And so what's going to happen? Nothing. You just tip them off. They're going to say, that's interesting, but they know. And this is one of the things that's confounding. One of the reasons the truth embargo is in its 78th year, in spite of the rise of the internet, social media, email, cell phones, trillions of cameras, podcasting, and everything else, which has spread it worldwide, is that, and this is something that one can debate, good, bad, whatever, is that the most powerful people in our country, let's just focus the United States, the richest people in our country, and certainly the presidents and the most powerful people in our military who absolutely know this is true will not tell us until more recently. Now it's getting there, but for decade after decade after decade, it was like, don't need to go there. I got power. I got money. I got a great life. I don't need to touch that tar baby. That was a statement that was given to me 25 years ago by Cy Hirsch, who's still around. When I actually talked to him on the phone and asked him if he wanted to get into this, and he said, I can't do it. It's a tar baby, meaning once you touch it, you can never leave it. And so that is, now I'm not condemning. I'm simply saying that when it's all said and done and the historians start analyzing it, they're going to want to try to understand, how is it that so many people with that kind of influence, power, and so forth just went along with this? What was so powerful about this particular information? Was it simply an intellectual decision? Was there a lot of maybe threats being passed around? It's not clear at all, but they didn't go there until recently. And the ones that did go there, they were people of rank and station, but not people of great power. So
Right.
when Edgar Mitchell, who had all the rank and station you could want, repeatedly said there was extraterrestrials here, right? And you had Paul Hellyer, who said it as a former, basically Secretary of Defense of Canada. But he was well retired at the time, and so he said it. Okay, and I could go down the line, right? But the really heavy duty people, the ones that are involved in politics and putting hundreds of millions of dollars into elections, or have corporations that are really changing the way of life, and the huge filmmakers that literally are making billions of dollars off this subject, and rightly so, because they're creating enormous projects. Not going there. But that is about to change. It's changing right now. And don't be surprised if at any time another major player suddenly comes out and says, look, this is real. We need to get the public informed on this.
Okay, Steve, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to know, why are we closer? Why now? And do you think President Trump is going to spill the beans, let the horse out of the barn anytime soon? Stay right there. We'll be right back after this break. Okay, we're back. We are not alone with Stephen Bassett. Fascinating conversation. Steve, if President Trump is the disclosure president, when do you think he'll spill the beans?
The reason that President Trump could be the disclosure president or the disclosure head of state is that in over 78 years, it took 78 years, and most of the work was done in the last 4 years. 4 years. The platform of legislation and witnesses coming forward and hearings and massive media coverage has now been basically set. It's not perfect, but it's adequate. And what I mean by platform, in other words, it is a platform that a president can now step up on and then tell the people they're not alone. And nobody is going to go, what? They're going to go, oh, yeah, right? Basically confirming what's already been confirmed in the appropriate way. So the platform is there for him to stand on, put it in the East Room. He steps on it, tells the people are not alone, more coming soon, and goes back to the Oval Office. That is there. That platform was not there. It was almost there for Biden, but not quite. Now it is there. So President Trump has no real barrier politically. The risk is minimal. And in fact, it could bring him some of the most extraordinary accolades any head of state has ever seen. And so in that sense, it's there. We know his inner circle is into the issue. We know his son is into the issue. But there's other things going on, obviously. This is a very tumultuous time.
Yeah.
And so but the platform is there. And the reason it's there is the work of tens of thousands of people, including a number of very important individuals over the last 4 years to build that platform. And so now it can happen. Now, there's no barrier. Doesn't mean he will. But I've got some information indicating that it is not out of the question, but look just what's happened in the last year, right? So it's not as if there aren't some significant issues that could get in front of the line here. And maybe it's a good idea to resolve some of this before you go there. I perfectly respect that. And so that's where we are right now. I think we could have, and by the way, there are several other heads of state that could disclose it if they so choose. And so that is also a factor. I can't speak to that, but I assure you they can do it if they want to. And if they do, we will be second or third.
Okay, for us, for normal folks who are not in politics, do we need to be afraid?
After 30 years in this, I can say we have far, far more to be afraid of from ourselves, from human beings, and from these ETs. If you want to put the two against each other, the ETs pose some issues, but it is a fraction of what humans are posing right now as they are hell-bent on virtually ripping their world and civilization apart. And so worrying about ETs is probably not going to be very helpful. Theoretically, they could be an extraordinary threat, but we've had 78 years of accumulation. Thousands of books have been written. I mean, the witnesses have come forward. We know a lot about these ETs, so the government says there are none, so therefore we know nothing. Well, that's nonsense. And what we know, if you add it up, some people get upset, some people find things that bother them, but overall, the record is clear. They are not a significant threat. They may even be a significant benefit to us if we can just get through our little episode of truth embargo and maybe open the doors for direct interaction.
Okay, Steve, we're going to end it at that. Fascinating. So much to think about, so much to digest. Thank you for your wisdom and your intelligence.
Appreciate you. Thanks,
Yes, we wish you the
jumping into this. Keep doing it. I'm available anytime.
Oh, well, there's so much more, and we're so grateful for your courage and your intelligence. All right, Stephen Bassett, we're not alone. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Tune in next time. I'm May K. Bueller with Queen City News.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.